Welcome. I'm Faz Rahman and you're watching Cafe DC. Today with us we have a couple, very accomplished husband and wife team, Dr. Arif Rauf and his wife Lamia Zia. They're very distinguished in the sense that both come from a very distinguished journalistic background, but also in case of Arif, he's not just a journalist anymore, he's a PhD. He is a professor at a US university and he has written books and quite a few papers on a very series of topics. Welcome, Arif and Lamia. Welcome to Cafe DC.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here. Let's start with you, Arif. I mean, you, mashallah, you're a very accomplished young man, starting as a print journalist from The Nation, which is one of very few English newspapers in Pakistan.
Right.
And then transitioning into electronic media, and then finally you're teaching at a very prestigious US university in Texas. Talk about your journey a little bit, please.
Right. So my journey is very interesting in a way. Like I took my first master's in Pakistan and went to Islamabad to start working with Delhi The Nation. At some point, I realized when I explored print media and later broadcast media, like going for ARY One Word and then CNBC TV there, that this is not enough. I need to go further. I need to learn more, go beyond just like not about how daily routine journalism is being done, rather like what are the factors, ethics, laws and values, and how global journalism is being
Is it
practiced.
because you see a lack of ethics and proper maturity in the Pakistani media that you were driven?
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, like I realized, like Faz, in Pakistan, there is so much passion and talent is there, but somehow not enough like resources are available for journalists to train themselves properly, right? So most of them, they learn by their like daily routines. Even if you are a graduate from journalism and mass communication program, it's like not something that we have trained them properly as we have seen here. So I felt that lack.
I think one of the reasons, of course, why this happened, because there was such a huge expansion in the media, especially in the electronic media in Pakistan, and there wasn't enough supply of trained journalists, reporters, writers. That's why. Lamia, you also worked in The Nation, and then like most print journalists, you also transitioned into an electronic journalist. Finally, you were working with Jio. So how was that experience? Did you have the same feeling as Arif did, or you were pretty much content with what you were doing?
I think I enjoy the print media because in print media, you have like more space. You can express yourself better. But if you're a good speaker, then definitely the broadcasting media is like, it has more charm. But I think
more glamour, so to speak.
More glamour,
exactly.
And if you really want the glamour, then you are really good fit to be the broadcast media. For me, I started as a print reporter, and then I made a switch to the.
I think that's Lamia is making a very good point. A lot of people still, even in established societies as the United States, I mean, they have become a very mature in the sense that media has a very long history in this country, in the West particularly. So still a lot of people, they tend to be more comfortable with the print media than electronics. So did you have that feeling as well, or no?
I think I realized I was more towards broadcast media. I was very, very happy and accomplished, like, joining broadcast media and learning my first-hand experience from there. And you, as you know, like you make best couples when you have different directions, but you still love each other.
Really?
So yeah.
Okay.
So it brings some more diversity in your life. So Lamia and I always have this disagreement. I think like broadcast media in Pakistani scenario has more role to play because it has
it's more influential.
Exactly.
More people watch. Have access to
Right.
Yeah.
And she's a really good writer, and I feel like I'm I'm more.
You're a better broadcaster,
exactly,
a better producer.
Exactly.
Than
So like
writer.
having both experiences made me feel like a better researcher now. Like my transition from being a journalist to being a researcher and an academic basically helps me so much in my classrooms every day. When I can bring examples from real life, and particularly working in Pakistan as a journalist, it always comes with challenges, right? So all these things helped me to transition into better academic and better researcher now. And when particularly I'm trying to tie it back with my country's journalism practices. And this is something that continues to
Yeah, I mean,
inspire
it's
me.
a great thing to have two, different, very solidly different backgrounds when it comes to journalism. Not just journalism, culture, social issues, political issues. I mean, of course, you have a lot to offer. Arif, when you first came here in this country, you came here as a fellow
Right.
on a scholarship.
Right.
And both, I think you also came on a fellowship, and then you both went back.
Right.
You came back for your PhD,
right.
and then you came you came back for your master's. Now that you have PhD and you're teaching, your topic is of course multimedia, right? Multimedia broadcasts and multimedia journalism. But you have also written a book,
Right.
which is Journalism After 9/11. Tell us something about why you wrote that book and what was the premise of that whole research.
Right.
work.
If I may go back to my
Please.
journalism experiences, when I was working in Pakistan, and particularly after 9/11, up until 2007, I felt my routine journalism practices changed. Every day, I was supposed to connect my routine news story with something to spice it up with something terrorism-related stuff. And then I would be guaranteed to get a front page space or back page space in my newspaper or even on broadcast medium prime time. So I had this feeling like we are transitioning so quickly from what was very, very important, because Pakistan is almost 20 million people there. There is so
200
much,
million
200 million people, thank you. Yeah, 200 million people there, and there is so much more that's going on other than terrorism. But everyone was like joining this bandwagon, and including myself. And we were talking about like
It's in the aftermath of 9/11, the
aftermath
attacks
of
of
9/11,
yes.
including like whenever these cricket teams, like for example from Sri Lanka, they were coming, everyone was talking about whether it's safe or not. Nobody was actually talking about how much pleasure and enjoy we get playing and watching
They
cricket.
forgot about the cricket itself, the
Right.
game, the sport, and
Right.
more focus was given to
Right. So
to
there
the
was
safety,
this
security.
drought in Pakistan during that time, after 2005 in Balochistan, and nobody was talking about that. There were so many other issues, women rights issues, poverty-related, energy crisis, which is actually popping up again. But nobody actually cared to talk about these things because everyone wanted to.
So basically, your premise was that the 9/11 changed the texture, the context,
Right.
and the nature of journalism,
Right.
and not just in Pakistan, actually around the world.
Exactly.
Yes.
This 9/11 thing itself became a news value. Like I remember, like when our editors in our newsroom cultures, they decided, okay, we have another beat, guys, and that's the 9/11 beat or terrorism beat. They called it terrorism beat. Earlier, there was no such thing in existence per se. Like we used to cover things, but not to such an organized extent.
Pakistan,
So-
actually, particularly the Pakistani society, did go through lots of those issues, problems. I mean, Pakistan's been exposed to terrorism since the invasion, the Soviet invasion of
Right.
Afghanistan. A lot of people came, and then especially the northern areas, Peshawar for that matter.
I completely agree with
KPK.
you.
So it was a story. But again, since I haven't read,
Right.
a total disclosure here, I haven't read your book. But do you think it's, in my opinion, is it, I may be wrong, I mean, is it a very simplification of the whole idea that, yes, why we're only focusing on terrorism and security issues rather than other issues? Isn't there a balance between other issues? I mean, when there's a huge story when a bomb is going off, of course, the whole effort, the resources converge on that event. For example, what happened in the Middle East. So, forget about so many other issues. Egypt and Syria, Iraq, they started getting less coverage in the U.S. media and around the world, and the focus was on Gaza. So do you think it's the nature of the beast that drives the coverage, or it's just people are people?
No, you raised very interesting point, Faz. What they say, like, if it bleeds, it leads, right? So that's that's the universal truth. I agree with you. But as a researcher, my point was, hey guys, let's stop for a minute. And let's try not to forget. It is important to cover. This issue is important to cover, terrorism or like extremism. But at the same time, let's not forget that also needs our attention. As we call it, balancing act. As we call it, like there are so many other important issues. They also be talk of the town. They also be like something that journalists should always be aware of.
Right.
For example, this energy crisis or poverty, that tends to leads us towards extremism. Like when we don't have water, we don't have like portable, clean drinking water. All these things actually bring some sort of anxiety. Education, health, right.
Infant mortality.
Exactly, all these issues, women health, like, or maybe I would say like basic human rights health related activities, minority issues in Pakistan. They need to be covered to the same extent, or at least to some extent. So like my job was, at that point I realized that's okay what we are doing, but we should not forget what we should also be doing. So I'm adding the word also, so as to like, bring some sort of like balance, and plus doing justice to our society, because our society is way more than terrorism. So there are so many, and plus innovation. There are so many scientists.
I mean, for example, when you were writing for The Nation, and both of you were writing, you had beats. So how about like having a spectrum of different beats, and then you have resources designated to one area, and then others also are being given proper attention.
Well, in my experience, when I joined the Daily The Nation as a reporter, and I found that there was some kind of specialized beat, like covering for the health, women, gender,
what was your
education.
Beat, Lamia?
So I actually created that beat, like gender, women, education, health, because there wasn't any specific kind of reporters who were covering this.
I see.
So I brought all these issues on the front pages: environment, and the maternal mortality issues in Pakistan, and then women issues.
Environment, climate change is of course is a lead. So can we talk about your, you worked here in DC with the U.S.-Pakistan Women's Council, which was basically, if I'm not wrong, sponsored by the former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, when she was at the State Department. What was the goal of that council?
It launched in 2012, and it's actually a partnership between the State Department and the American University. And actually, I'm collaborating with them on various projects, from women in entrepreneurship, education, career counseling, women in medicine. And actually, their goal is actually to promote women in Pakistan. And DC is actually, sitting here, we can generate ideas, but we can implement in Pakistan through partnerships. So that's what the council is doing. They are promoting women and giving them economic opportunities, career counseling, helping them. And they have recently launched an office in Islamabad. So, and they have like resource center. So they are like creating resources for women in Pakistan to help them, and through their actually entrepreneurship. So their focus is actually women in economic empowerment.
Well, Lamia, we want to go a little bit more into detail about this council, but we have to take a short break. And then once we come back, we'll ask Lamia and, of course, Arif a few more questions about journalism, those issues, and also the council that she's been working on. Please stay with us.
In my future goals, I'm planning to actually focus on global women leadership.
This is the time we have to bring collaborations between universities of Pakistan and universities of the United States.
Welcome back. I'm Faiz Rahman, and you're watching Cafe DC. And with us, we have Dr. Arif Rauf and his wife, Lamia Zia. Okay, so we were talking about this Women's Council, which was sponsored, actually was held, Hillary Clinton helped create this organization, and the idea was to promote the entrepreneurship in Pakistan among women, what you call the leaders, the business leaders, or even budding business people. So what is the main focus now? I mean, yes, you said we basically just come up with the ideas here, and then we have partnerships in Pakistan. Do you think that arrangement is working out well? Like, do you have enough partners in Pakistan, and those partners, they reflect a good cross section of the society, or just a few groups, elite groups that basically get to work with your council?
Well, as far as I'm actually involved, collaborating with the projects for like last 2 months, staying here in summer, I found that they have like a couple of very strong partnerships, like APNA, Association of Pakistani Physicians of North Association.
Doctors
So
Association.
it's not
basically.
doctors, so we call it Doctors Association.
Yes, exactly.
And they have a very strong network, and they are actually giving training and career counseling to young medical doctors in Pakistan. Because what happens in Pakistan, like I think 32% only who comes to medicine, like women in Pakistan, they're just able to continue their professions because after they get married.
So 32% female doctors,
Yeah.
they don't pursue their careers after they get married.
Then they get
Wow.
married because of their families and other issues.
After having so much time, energy, resources, they
They
just
are not able to
give up.
continue their medical profession. So what this council is doing, they are promoting them through APNA.
But I just want to make sure that it does not reflect on the one side. I mean, it's because it's not that women are forced to give up their medical profession because of
Definitely,
marriage.
it's their own choice.
It's a lot of times, I have seen. I also actually had this background. I was pre-med, and then because I just couldn't get admission into medical, so I had to go to pharmacy. And I was so mad with my female colleagues who became doctors, and on their own. It's not that their husbands or their families asked them to leave their profession. They just they thought, okay, we're fine. We got married, and now we're gonna pursue our family life. So we have to make sure that we also understand that
Exactly,
this
their
is,
cultural thing. Definitely, we are negating that cultural things, and
Exactly.
definitely family care is also a responsibility.
Right.
So what this APNA is doing, they have created a career counseling network. So from there, from New York, like there are like all medical professors. So they take online classes and they train young female doctors. Like for instance, like as you said, like because of the hours that female doctors cannot be able to perform the responsibilities, like 24 hours in the medicine.
Right.
So I mean, like these career counselors is like helping them. How can they actually involve them in the medical profession, not taking their 24 hours? So it's
So how's this council contributing towards that goal? I mean, APNA, yes, career counseling, but your council is also playing some role, which is like the State Department's sponsor.
as we have like partnerships with the Hashu Foundation, APNA, and we also
I
have.
think Hashu also has a branch, or probably their headquarters in North America in Houston, right? If I'm not.
I think yeah.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
good.
So like these kind of strong partners, we have like programs, and through these partners, they are implementing them. So like it's like portraying the positive image of Pakistani women, which actually lacking in the Western Pakistani media. Because our Pakistani woman is always in the media when there is something negative image, when they are wearing a burqa, when there is some acid burns, when there is some domestic violence, when there is some honor killing. So like what is this council role is that they are highlighting the positive image of Pakistani women. So I mean, which is very.
So not just doctors, female doctors, but also
Yes,
other
businesswomen,
professions.
entrepreneurs, education, and they also have like a summer sister program in which they bring young girls from schools and for like a month or something in New York, and they actually affiliate these young students in the different universities so they learn and they
this
get
council
back.
is fairly a new organization, just like 2 years, probably 2-3 years.
Yes.
But any success story, anything that you would like to share, anything that the council has accomplished so far?
I think they have like achievements. They have like different. I mean, it's only 2 years for
Right,
them.
exactly.
And in 2 years, they have achieved so many things, like so many.
They
like,
have laid down some good groundwork.
yes,
I
getting the
guess, yeah.
partnerships, and they have like established a resource center in Islamabad, and then they are involved in different kind of these resource career planning and career training kind of things in Pakistan, and it's promoting the women images. They have recently launching an e-blog in which they are bringing all entrepreneur voices in the blog, so from Pakistan. So these kind of achievements, like if you just take like a very short span of time they are doing, so which is kind of very admirable.
Again, this question is for both of you. You have done a lot of work in journalism here. You're teaching, at a very prestigious university. There is a lot of anti-Americanism in Pakistan, and through your work with the council, how do you see? I mean, that is something that it is a challenge for people like you and I, and especially you, because working with the council, you must come across people who have all kinds of conspiracy theories about the United States, and its policies. So how do you tackle those in your classroom, for that matter?
Right,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. When I go to my classrooms, my students tell me that I am bringing a very, very different shape or like image of Pakistan to them. Because this is not the Pakistan they have seen, like wearing tie and everything, speaking English, even if having an accent, and like talking about human rights, ideas, and like innovations and all these things. The Pakistan they come to know, particularly the generation.
So what you're
youth,
saying,
right?
Doctor, is basically the misunderstandings are on both sides.
On both sides,
American people,
exactly.
they don't have a clear picture, image
Exactly.
of Pakistanis here, and vice versa.
Right, and that's why, as I was talking to you earlier, like my research that's about public diplomacy, bringing two people together and like witnessing each other. Human beings all across the world, they are same, right? They have similar kind of opportunities, and there is education, there is innovation, there is like love, mutual love, but we have to overcome the misunderstandings. And the moment when I stand in my classroom, I become ambassador for Pakistan and the other side of Pakistan, which is unfortunately mostly missing because of like when terrorism and
And
other
I think that's
important
probably
issues.
what
Right.
you represent is the larger segment of the society.
Right.
As I know Pakistan.
Exactly.
Pakistan is not just what we see in the news.
Exactly. There is
so-
more to that.
exactly.
There is growing middle class. There is growing love for education. People, they sacrifice their bread and butter, including my parents, to send me to good schools, right, and for good education. So all these things, they get some shock, but at the same time, they just welcome me so much love and care is there. And then when I go back, there is that misperception about the US there in Pakistan, and I must admit that. And then I become the ambassador for the United States, and I tell them how loving and caring people they are, how much they want to know about the real Pakistan, and how much care they have at every level. It's just we have to go beyond. We have to bring people to
So
people
this
connection.
people-to-people coordination, communication, interaction is very important. So Lamia,
Exactly.
basically, so I mean, yes, he's here, but through your council, you get to work with lots of Pakistanis on the phone, through Skype, maybe visits. So what are some of the challenges that you face?
One of the challenges, like mostly we are like, I don't know how to say that, but I think we are a little shy. I mean, we are confident, but I think when it comes like, I don't know, Rauf, I think you can better explain, but I think we are really not outspoken kind of people.
Some
So-
people, I guess.
Some people.
Not all of them.
But
I know
if
some
we
Pakistanis,
given,
they're
like,
way
opportunity-
outspoken. Yes, absolutely.
But if you have given opportunity, that definitely we can do great.
Okay.
So that's what I found in my, my
Probably,
community.
especially when it comes to female
Yeah.
professionals from
Talking with the doctors of
like
women, yes.
not from major cities,
Yes.
but I have seen and met people. Actually, we just welcomed a large delegation here. All people in their 1920s, girls and boys. They were here last week at VOA, all across from Pakistan. Young professionals or young students, amazing people. I mean, the level of confidence, interaction, and
Yes,
I
yes.
did not see a
Exactly.
shred of shyness. They were like, they were asking all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think we just are consumed by sometimes what Arif said, by the news, that build our perceptions, our images, our outlook about other societies and everything. And I think what he has done, that book, how journalism and reporting suffered because of these terrorist events or incidents, attacks. that we, human beings, I mean, in every society, we just kind of started looking each other through those glasses, and that is something very, very unfortunate.
Right.
We don't have a lot of time, Arif, but I would like you to talk about your subject, actually, multimedia journalism. What is it that you see here in America which can be beneficial to people in Pakistan? Because there's a lot of craving in Pakistan among young professionals to know what's going on and how can they improve themselves. So briefly, your advice here.
Yeah, excellent question. I think we need to train our forthcoming journalists with these technologies like mobile journalism. And there is now another journalism coming up pretty quickly, that's drone journalism. When we cannot send our journalists over there, we can actually train them with some smaller drone technologies with those cameras. They can be safe, they can play a wonderful journalistic role. And multimedia platforms are basically alternative to traditional media platforms. They can tell the story, they can spread the narrative to the world with the speed of light, virtually, literally. And so in order to train them for that, our educational institutes, particularly journalism institutes in Pakistan, they should start realizing that in order to cope up with the rest of the world, they have to revise their curriculum. US is an amazing country in this regard. It's always open to ideas. It grabs the opportunity, it grabs the technology. And this is the time we have to bring collaborations between universities of Pakistan and universities of the United States. There are some examples that has already started happening, just because people like me and other people from Pakistan, when they become faculties here, and they started connecting back other universities to the US. And I see a wonderful collaboration and wonderful future if this goes on.
Let's go back to one final question for you, Lamia. Now you're going back for another master's.
Yes.
Isn't it enough already? You already haven't learned enough? I mean, why? Why bother?
Okay, the reason for going for another master's, I already have master's in media studies.
Exactly.
And doing this master's in political science is because I'm in my future goals. I'm planning to actually focus on global women leadership, women political participation in Pakistan. So like, for this kind of research, I was like thinking I should have like a broader knowledge and skills to deal with this kind of area. So like political science master's was like another option. I said, okay, I should go for it.
Very good, very good. I think on this very good note, we'll say goodbye to our audience. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Cafe DC with wonderful guests Arif Rauf and his wife Lamia Zia.
Thank you.
Please follow me on Twitter, which is Faiz Rahman VOA, and also give your feedback through our Facebook page, and visit our website urduvoa.com. Thank you very much for watching.